Robbo, we've been told that it was happening. We've been told he'd signed, but still no official announcement. And then at long last, back on Monday, we hear Mauricio Pochettino is the new Chelsea manager. He is actually signed, which presumably means he's coming. He's not coming until July 1st for some reason that's not fully clear to me. Maybe it has to do with compensation from his previous job and Chelsea suddenly being chintzy about paying off a month's wages. I don't know. Right choice?
I think it's a good choice. I think he's a manager that knows what he wants. He's a manager that manages the board very well. When he was at Tottenham, the first thing he said to Daniel Levy, he said, if I hear that you come in to the dressing room or you're phoning up players or you're asking what's going on in the training ground, I'll walk out this club. So he managed Daniel Levy very well for the time he was there. He's going to manage Bowley as well. And that's going to be the first thing he's got to do. Then he's got to make sure he gets the best out of the players. He's got to make some good decisions, who goes and who stays. He's got to have a formation and a system that they play week in, week out, and he knows exactly what he's getting from the players. So I think it's a good decision.
I like the fact that he's played different systems. He understands football. He's a man manager. He's good with players. He's pragmatic. I think those are all pluses. Some minuses, perhaps. I don't think he's the most collegial manager in terms of listening to the sporting director and the sporting director's plans. You know, he often knows better and goes off with his own guys. I think that's important at Chelsea because they actually have two sporting directors, plus a technical director, of course. I also think that, because this is how fans often think, is if he starts having a rough time, the fact that, you know, he comes from Spurs and was a Spurs manager and they had the Battle of the Bridge and all this other stuff, it's not going to help him. It shouldn't make a difference because he's a professional. I think people will also, if things go awry, people will immediately point out like, oh, look, what have you ever won? And other than, you know, I think it's a French Cup and a French League with Paris Saint-Germain, where, you know, frankly, my phone could probably win one of those. You know, he hasn't won much. So all this stuff will come into play, but you had to bring somebody in. And I think from a football perspective, he's solid. But what I can't work out is, do you think he has any sense now of what formation he might play, or is that going to remain fluid until he assesses the players?
If he knows he's going to have that job, and he's known for quite a while, he'd have watched every video of every game that Chelsea have played. So he won't need to have the players in training to know what they can and can't do. He'll have in his mind what he wants to do, which players will be in the side, which players he'll want to get rid of, which players don't affect.
But formation, are we talking 3-5? Are we talking back three, or are we talking back four?
I wouldn't know that. The one thing that he's got to do, if he wants to play the pressing game that he's done in the past, then you have to have enough players in the front areas to do that. So it's going to have. So it's more importantly what he does in the front areas in terms of, does he press with three, does he press with four, does he have three pressing up high up and then a midfield player going and joining the midfield players, all that sort of stuff. That's the most important thing for Pochettino. Whether he plays with three at the back, four at the back, it's so 3 and 4 changes all the time by just the way the fullbacks can push on.
What strikes me about the situation is we believe Chelsea have signed Christopher Nkunku. That's another situation where we don't know. We don't have any idea, kind of, you know, because they haven't made a statement. But if Nkunku comes in, Nkunku's only ever played, I mean, he's played different roles, but, you know, he was a top scorer in the Bundesliga this past season, despite, I think, only starting like 20-odd games. He's played in the front two, you know, and he's been very productive that way, sort of as a second striker. He can't play up front on his own. If you put him on the wing, you know, you already have a fair amount of competition there, and Raheem Sterling and Mykhailo Mudryk, to name but two, but you know, there's more obviously. So I would have thought logically, you're going to play a front two, and then it's Sterling and Havertz maybe if he likes Havertz. I know not everybody does, or Sterling and a new center forward, maybe Lukaku coming back. Sterling, Nkunku, I meant. How do you see this? What do you make of Nkunku? And is that his best role?
That's his best role. When I've seen him play, sometimes it's been with a centre forward and two players either side of a centre forward, just that little bit deeper, so in the front three, and he's making runs beyond. He'll come short at times. He'll link up. He'll play little 1-2s with the front player. He'll run through the inside left channel or run through the inside right channel. He can also play, as you said, off a front player and make runs beyond him at the right time. So it all depends who he thinks is a centre forward to play alongside him. You know, if Lukaku comes back, and then you can play like Martinez did with Lukaku at Inter. That would work perfectly. That's an ideal combination. Or whether he says, no, I'm going to play with three fluent front three, which then Havertz could still be the main striker.
All right, Rob, let's just carry on a little bit with this, because so much of the focus at Chelsea, because of their issue scoring goals this year, and everybody knows the stat. Oh, look, was it Erling Haaland scored more than they did? Ha, ha, ha. But I actually think there's a big issue in the middle of the park. And the reason I say this is, take Enzo aside, and we can debate, obviously his transfer fee and whatever. But of the other central midfielders, Mateo Kovacic, we're going to talk about this later, he's got a year left on his contract. I don't think he's getting a new deal. In fact, he's in talks with Manchester City right now. N'Golo Kante's contract is up, and I don't think it's going to be renewed, at least as of right now. Zakaria, who they brought in as an extra midfielder, he's going to go back on loan to Juventus, and I don't think will be missed at Chelsea. Andre Santos, who they spent a lot of money on to sign, he can't get a work permit, so he's still in Brazil. Ruben Loftus-Cheek, his contract expires in 2025. You have to decide either you sell now or you extend him. He's been linked to Milan and to other clubs. I think I've covered everybody with two guys left. Conor Gallagher, and who I think is also 2025 or 2026. And Mason Mount, who's a year away from free agency, he's been linked to other clubs. Am I forgetting a Chelsea midfielder, central midfielder? Okay, so you basically have Enzo. If these guys go, and many people say they have to sell them also to try to balance the books, and maybe they're not good enough or whatever. Most of these guys go, you're going to have to bring in several central midfielders. Enzo's very good. He can't play central midfield by himself or just him and Conor Gallagher. If you like Gallagher, and I know not everybody does.
Yeah, I mean, all those players you mentioned, they're all good players. But are they going to make Chelsea top four contenders alongside Enzo? If
Conte made Chelsea top four contenders before, most of them.
Yeah. If Conte was fully fit, you'd have to give him another, because he's still...
Yeah, and if my aunt had wheels, she'd be a bicycle. Let's not go down that. Okay.
So there's the big issue. If Conte was fit, he would be in the side. He would be, but he's not the same player he was.
But even if he was fit, to extend his contract now that he's entering free agency would just cost them an absolute mint, and I'm not sure how much money they can spend given the amount of money. This is a team that lost $500 million before Bowley even came in.
So it goes back to the mismanagement of buying their players, their recruitment. So they've got all these players, they've got several centre-backs, they've got loads of full-backs, they've got lots of front players or players that play off the front, lots of wide players, but no central midfield players that are good enough to take Chelsea to that next level.
I mean, they have a lot of guys who I think are very solid Premier League players who they can move on. Even, guys who came through the youth academy, guys who they brought in and whatever. And I think they're pretty explicit. They view these as assets, right? The problem with assets is they don't always necessarily appreciate. Last night we did the FC show. We heard from James Ollie about, maybe they'll cash in on Kai Havertz and move him on, right? And I'm thinking to myself, Kai Havertz has a really, really big contract. Chelsea paid, I think, $80 million for him, something like that. If you don't want to sell him at a loss, you're going to have to get...
And it's also his wages.
Yeah, and he's got really big wages. And he's in that level where the clubs who can afford Kai Havertz, who can afford to give you 60 or 80 million for Kai Havertz and pay his wages, right? Because people always seem to ignore that part, that they're paying lower wages now, but before Boldy, Abramovich paid really high wages. The kind of clubs that can afford to do that, they don't want Kai Havertz. They've got better players, right? And the clubs who would say, we'll take him, say, we'll take him, but you got to help us out. Like Inter Milan with Lukaku, where you end up, spending, you end up paying like a big chunk of his wages and so on. Or, as happened with Inter, I mean, they signed Cesare Casadei, who's really, really good. They signed an Inter youth player for $20 million. Would it have been $20 million in that situation if they didn't also have the Lukaku thing going on? I'm not 100% sure, right? So you put all these things together, and I don't think it's quite that straightforward. For me, you don't think about moving Havertz on. You make it work. You got Havertz, you got Broja, who I really, really like.
Yeah,
I think
he's done well whenever I've seen him play.
And, Nkunku, Sterling, these are your strikers. I make it work with that. And I think if you're Pochettino, you can say, you know what? This is a good group of players. I can make
So when Pochettino goes in there, he's got to either make his mind up to play the way he wants to and work the players around that, or he looks at the players and says, these can do this job. This is the way I'm going to have to play. So he bases his formation and his tactics around the players rather than the other way around.
Which I think is what most good managers do, especially
they have to
initially,
at some point,
because they know that they come in, they can't change 20 players, right? He doesn't have that luxury going in here. And I think actually Pochettino is pretty good at that.
Yeah.
He hasn't, he's played an aggressive pressing style. He's also not played that. When he was at Paris Saint-Germain, and he had...
You can't press with those three up
front. You're not going to press with Neymar and Messi, right? So I think you're actually getting somebody who is kind of a Swiss Army knife, a really good pragmatist. I think there's a certain parallel between Pochettino and one of my favorites, of course, Carlo Ancelotti.
Yeah.
And I'm not just referring to, the way their heads look. I'm referring to the fact that these are generally good managers, that they can be pragmatic, that they can be different styles. Now, one of the key differences is one of those two has won a ton of league titles and Champions Leagues, and the
only thing you'd say with Pochettino, when he went in at Southampton, he completely changed the way they played. When he went in at Tottenham, he completely changed the way they played. Will he be looking to do the same at Chelsea? Or as we've discussed...
When he went in at Paris Saint-Germain, he didn't change the way they played.
No, because he couldn't.
Or he realized it wouldn't be worth it. No. He realized we can reach our goals, or some of them anyway. So, again, I don't have an issue with Pochettino appointment. I just think it's a monumental task ahead, and I'm really concerned about how they're going to make this work financially in terms of balancing the books.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.